two boats, same length, same age. One is listed at $42,000 and sitting for 90 days. The other sold in a week at $68,000. The seller of the first one cannot figure out what is wrong with his boat. Nothing is wrong with his boat. Everything is wrong with his category. Here is the data behind why one of these brands holds value and the other keeps getting repriced down. Both brands are legitimate. Sea Ray was founded in 1959 by Cornelius Ray in Oxford, Michigan. It pioneered fiberglass construction in pleasure boats, introduced the iconic Sundancer cabin cruiser line in 1975, and built itself into the largest boat company in the world. At the time, C.N. Ray sold it to Brunswick Corporation for $350 million in 1986. Boston Whaler was founded in 1958 by Richard Fisher. In 1961, he famously sawed a whaler in half in front of the press and motored away in the stern section to prove his construction was unsinkable. This is not a case of a strong brand and a weak brand. They are two brands that made different decisions, and the used market has been pricing those decisions for decades. The most important variable in used boat valuation is not age, condition, or hours. It is the answer to one question: what happens when saltwater finds a path into this hull? For Boston Whaler, the answer is documented and has not changed since 1958. The Unibond construction process injects liquid two-part polyurethane foam into the cavity between the hull and deck while both skins are still curing. The foam expands under pressure, fills every void, chemically bonds both skins into a single unified structure, and cures permanently. There is no internal void space. There is no core material that can absorb water and delaminate. The finished hull carries up to 2.5 times the flotation required by Coast Guard standards, according to Boston Whaler's own published documentation. This construction cannot be replicated after the fact, and it does not degrade over time. Original whaler hulls from the 1960s and the 1970s are still surveying structurally clean today. Sea Ray builds quality fiberglass construction across its lineup. The brand became the first recreational fiberglass boat manufacturer, with all production facilities certified under the ISO 9002 quality system. But the Unibond process is specific to whaler and produces a hull that survives decades of saltwater exposure without a structural failure mode. That difference is what the used market is pricing. The resale data reflects this precisely. MyCruiserLife's independently documented depreciation analysis confirms Boston Whaler consistently retains more value than comparable production brands, and that well-kept examples rarely sit on the market for long. A hull that cannot develop structural water intrusion does not need to discount for that risk. A hull that can does, and buyers price that possibility in whether the seller acknowledges it or not. For most of its history, Sea Ray's core product was the sterndrive-powered sport boat and express cruiser. The sterndrive was a natural fit for the brand's focus on water sports, swim platforms, and low-profile hull designs. Industry-wide, sterndrive sales peaked in the 1990s at approximately 78,000 units per year, according to BoatTEST's documented industry analysis. By recent years, that figure had fallen to fewer than 20,000 units annually, a decline of more than 75%. The used market for sterndrive boats shrank as those sales declined. A sterndrive boat that was in the mainstream of recreational boating in 2005 is in a shrinking category today. Sea Ray recognized this shift and moved aggressively toward outboard-powered models, with the SLX 400 outboard, the SDX series, and the Sundancer 370 outboard, all representing documented investments in the outboard transition. But 10-year-old and 15-year-old Sea Rays with sterndrive configurations carry the used market consequence of belonging to a category the industry moved away from. Boston Whaler's center console and outboard platform lineage, the Montauk, the Outrage, and the Dauntless, were never dependent on the sterndrive. That structural alignment with where the market moved is reflected directly in comparative used prices. Stir drive maintenance is not trivial. Bellows replacement, a documented requirement to prevent water intrusion into the bilge through the transom, is a service item that many casual owners defer. A deferred bellows on a used stern drive boat is a water intrusion path that a moisture meter will find during a survey. That maintenance profile contributes to the price pressure on the category beyond the simple supply and demand equation. Search any major listing platform right now. The volume of used Sea Rays available at any given time is significantly higher than the volume of used Boston Whalers of comparable size and age. Volume and price move in opposite directions when demand is constant. The reason the supply imbalance exists is documented. Sea Ray was producing 28,000 boats per year at peak capacity when CN Ray sold the company in 1986. And Brunswick continued at high production volumes through the 1990s and the 2000s. The used market absorbed decades of high-volume production. The Hull Truth Forum's documented buyer consensus across thousands of threads confirms the pattern explicitly. High supply of a specific platform creates downward price pressure even when individual boats are well maintained and presented. Boston Whaler production is not a small operation, but the brand commands a buyer base willing to wait for the right boat and pay accordingly. Chief Engine's comparative analysis of the two brands states it directly. The Sea Ray used market is more saturated, but newer, well-kept models still move. Long-term value goes to Boston Whaler. That is not a subjective opinion. It is the price output of inventory supply meeting buyer demand in the used market. Boatmart's independently documented depreciation tracking confirms this directly. Brands like Boston Whaler, Grady White, and Bertram depreciate at a slower rate, with some models at as little as 18% depreciation, while high-volume production boats in the lifestyle cruiser category experience steeper curves. Volume and resale price move in opposite directions. That is not a flaw in Sea Ray's product. It is the mathematical output of how many units entered the used market and how many qualified buyers are competing for them at any given time. Every boat depreciates. The question is how much and how fast, and the answer is determined almost entirely by who is competing to buy it when you want to sell. Boston Whaler has built a documented buyer base that behaves differently from the buyer pool for most production recreational boats. MyCruiserLife's independently documented depreciation analysis confirms that Boston Whaler consistently retains more resale value than comparable production brands, because the market trusts the construction, and because well-kept examples rarely sit on the market for long. A 10-year-old whaler with clean logs and proper storage has a buyer pool that includes serious offshore anglers, families who understand the construction, and experienced buyers who specifically seek the platform because it holds its value and does not develop the structural issues that accumulate on lesser-built hulls over a decade of saltwater use. A 10-year-old stern drive Sea Ray of similar size has a buyer pool shaped by price sensitivity, concerns about the stern drive maintenance cycle, and the awareness that another comparable boat is available 4 listings over at a lower price. Sea Ray's newer outboard-driven platforms, the SLX series and the Sundancer 370 outboard, are building a different trajectory in the used market precisely because they are not subject to the stern drive category contraction. The depreciation gap that shows up most severely on 10 to 15-year-old Sea Rays is a function of the category those boats were built into, not a judgment on the quality of what Sea Ray builds today. Subscribe for more content like this, and if you want to avoid the costly mistakes most boaters make, I put together a no-fluff guide covering exactly that in the description. The practical implication of this data runs in 2 directions depending on where you sit in the transaction. Sea Ray is not a brand to avoid. Sea Ray was the first recreational fiberglass boat manufacturer to achieve ISO 9002 certification across all production facilities. It generates approximately $720 million in annual revenue as part of Brunswick's portfolio, and its current outboard-driven lineup represents a genuine re-engineering of what the brand is building for the next decade. The SLX series, the Sundancer 370 outboard, and the SDX platform are not the same used market proposition as a 15-year-old stern drive configuration. If you are buying a used boat in the 30 to 40 foot range, and your priority is minimizing total cost of ownership across a 5 to 10 year window, the construction and resale trajectory of a Boston Whaler or similar platform, such as Grady White and Regulator, are documented by NADA and independent resale tracking as holding strong value in the center console category. That path produces a lower net cost over time, even when the purchase price is higher. You pay more entering, you lose less across the ownership window, and you exit with more. If you are buying a used Sea Ray, and there are compelling reasons to do so, the opportunity is in understanding exactly which segment of the lineup you are in. A newer outboard configured Sea Ray SLX or Sundancer 370 outboard is a different used market proposition than a 15-year-old stern drive Sundancer. The construction is not the liability. The platform category and the inventory volume are. The inspection protocol before any used purchase from either brand is the same. Run a moisture meter across the full hull bottom. Above 12% is elevated, and above 15% indicates active intrusion. If the boat has a stern drive, check every gimbal bearing and bellows, because deferred bellows replacement is a documented water intrusion path directly into the bilge. Pull service records for every interval. Factor every deferred item into your offer before you write a number. The brands are real, the resale data is documented. The only question is whether the buyer understood both before the check cleared.